So we'll start with public comment. This is anyone who's in the room has 2 minutes to address anything not on the agenda. We have listeners only, and we love that.
We do have speakers, but they are racing down the hill as fast as they can, so.
The good news is after the update and the meeting is adjourned, we are here to hear anything else. We receive emails, so within this kind of more formal structure, there is always ability to use to take input. So just so you know. Okay, so we're going to start with the 2024-2025 tenant protections work plan. We did receive the staff report ahead of time, so top line and get some input from us. I'll turn it over to Alexis.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. So we are here today presenting our tenant protection work plan for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. And there's 3 components of the plan. One is a collaboration, a countywide collaboration that involves a variety of different outreach activities around anti-displacement and education for the entire county of Marin. That includes various components, including a countywide committee, which launched a couple of months ago and has met several times. Also, focus groups that are expected to launch in August. A website that has launched called rootedinmarin.org, and a survey that we're expecting to launch any day now. So that is underway and is expected to go through the spring. We are also in tandem working on a couple of San Rafael specific approaches. So the second of which is or the second item on this work plan is a series of community engagement capacity building workshops in Spanish. San Rafael has by far the largest Spanish speaking population in Marin County. And this is one of the programs that we have in our recently adopted housing element last year. And so the goal of these workshops is sort of twofold. One, to provide education and help residents become more informed about what the policies are that exist for tenant protections in San Rafael and what some of their rights are, such as fair housing laws, but also for us to get feedback from residents around tenant protections and what they're experiencing. And that feedback will be folded into that larger, along with the countywide approach in when we come back to the city council regarding tenant protections next year, which is a city council goal and objective through 2025. And then the last component is an evaluation by staff of the city's existing tenant protections. This is something that the city council has asked us for. And that is slated to come to the council before the end of this year, looking at mandatory mediation program, looking at our just cause for eviction policy, and looking at our relocation assistance policy. I will pause there and just see if there are questions and comments from the subcommittee or if there's anything else that other staff would like to add.
I have questions, but I'll start with Councilmember Kurtz. Any questions?
I think one of my questions has to do with what we hear a lot from the community, sort of ties in with tenant protections, but also ties in with code enforcement. And I'm wondering if that is either being addressed through the questions in the subcommittee or in the focus groups, because there's not a good distinction between those right now. And I think the community, there's not clarity. I mean, and at the end of the day, is it tenant protections or is it code enforcement? People shouldn't have to worry about that, but how are we looking at those two pieces?
Thank you for the question. As you said, any conversation we have about housing and tenant protections, habitability and housing inspections comes up in every single conversation with the community. So I really appreciate that. And we, knowing that for the 6 workshops, are hoping to dedicate one of the workshops specifically to code enforcement and have our code enforcement supervisor, who is Spanish speaking, come and present and be introduced to people and give his card out, because we do want we want to cover, even though a big component of this is focused on some other tenant protections, housing habitability is a huge tenant protection, and so holding that into this approach was really important.
Right, thank you. Can I just add one piece to that too, that, we often hear, I know you know this, that, people are afraid to, report something or to come have the inspection because then, and so I know Hector, we've talked about some creative strategies to keep the anonymity and have some, I think this is gonna be a great opportunity to talk about what would that look like capacity is always the issue, but how can we come and say, we're gonna look at everybody's water heater, whatever it is, so if there are complaints or concerns and people want the inspection, we can do it. The hard part is like trying to time the routine to like a more urgent code issue. And so how can we work on our side to be flexible around how to do that in a way that really supports their community and getting their, making sure they're safe and in safe conditions.
So I have more add is just related to just like, our programmatic overview of what we do as a city and a department and a code enforcement team. It's kind of better collateral materials, like what services we actually offer. Better collateral information, FAQ, like how does this work? What is a homeless specialist? And so that's another factor we are evaluating currently as our program leads, but it's tied in directly to this because we do get the similar type questions. So I'd love to have better website information, better, handouts and materials. So it's part of that programmatic approach for what we're doing. So people understand what actual service we provide. Some of the services are not us, they are the county or another agency, but clarifying what the actual city's role in this is.
Yeah, and making it easier for the community as well. I mean, as easy as possible. Also, in terms, and I may have missed as I was going through this, is there a process for outreach to the property owners?
Yes, absolutely. So the focus groups will be one opportunity. We'll have, or the intention is to have both two focus groups, one with smaller housing providers and one with more large scale housing providers. And then there'll also be additional, opportunities on the website for anybody to leave a comment. There'll be additional sort of community workshops and forums for anybody who'd like to come and give input.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Alexis, this is a great report, and I'm assuming that it's going to be foundational to what's presented to the council later. So I just had a couple comments. I really appreciated all the county data versus San Rafael. I would be interested in having those by Supervisor Rodoni's districts, because what happens when you look at all of Marin County, the data gets really diluted by other jurisdictions. And so I know what you were saying here was, oh, we're really different. And actually the supervisor's district, their numbers are going to be exactly the same as ours. So it's really having the county underscore how much we're similar and doing the same work versus, oh, the county's going to go to this and we're going to go do this separate thing. Because it actually, my next point is that the county absolutely has to be the lead on this. They've hired the consultant. They're doing the overall, bringing the group together. The workshops plan look great. So really underscoring that. And maybe we also want to look too, I mean, definitely Dennis Rodoni's, but maybe Aaron Lucas as well. I mean, I don't want the supervisors to be thinking, oh yeah, this is a San Rafael issue. Actually, two of their districts, I think their numbers would probably 100% be in alignment. So that was more of a comment. My questions are around the workshop. So we'll be working with the community on the Catalyst plan, which is a resident-led engagement plan with Omar and the Canal Alliance. And I just want to make sure that I don't think you're going to have an answer right now. We have funding to do the Catalyst plan. Does that help with what we're trying to do here? Because otherwise we're asking, it's the same thing we're talking about, whether it's sea level rise or transit. So that's probably another offline conversation. But when you come and present saying, we've talked to our community partners, we're working on their resident-led engagement plan, and this is how this dovetails with that work. Otherwise, it's the same questions.
So we had a big briefing on that.
Okay.
So I tried to give the deep dive to Alexis and Micah on, and I had the same sort of questions like, well, how does this fit? And where's the Venn diagram overlap exist? And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if I missed a nuance here, think one of the ways that we know there'll be some connectivity that we need to do some coordination around is where there may be some opportunity with the outreach component. And how that's designed, not so much the focus groups, because that's a really specific thing.
Right.
But, or do you want to elaborate? You'd probably say it better than I could, Alexis.
And I'm hoping it's being designed with our community partners. So what we're putting together, that Omar and whoever else is saying, yeah, this is the right way forward.
And one of the things so that that's exciting is Canal Line's just onboarded, literally, I think 3 days ago, a housing organizer.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I wanna reach out and meet with her
Great.
and make sure that you know, if they're gonna do workshops that we're like, what are you covering? And so that we're not redundant. So that is on my list of things to do.
And that's fantastic because they are also leading the efforts, the lead agency on the Catalyst Resident Engagement Plan. So thank you for connecting those dots. And then 2 other comments. One, are these the meetings that the county's organizing, are they open to the public? I couldn't tell from reading the document.
I will clarify that let's see,
The focus groups probably are
the
not, but I'm
focus
just
groups
talking
are
about
not.
the
Um,
countywide committee that's been meeting monthly.
So that meeting is not open to the public, I don't believe. However, I believe that we post notes on the website. And I will triple check that, but the intention is to have some broader, so the role of that committee is to provide some guidance and input on, hey, how should we be reaching the community? What are the channels?
Okay.
Kind of, you know, we brought the survey to them and said, hey, how does this look to you? What's missing? Is it too long? So that's the type of input that committee is providing. And then there'll be future like broader meetings where folks can attend.
So it's almost like a technical advisory group kind of get,
Right,
okay, that
right.
makes sense. And then the last question, this would be for when it comes to the council. The council has approved additional protections around the opportunity zone.
Mhm.
And so having any data on that, because that is one area that we've tried something different. Do we have any data? It might be too soon, but I know that will be a question that will come forward. Okay. Councilmember Kurtz, any other questions or?
No, I mean, it's such a detailed tactical piece, but use the pantries for distribution of flyers
Okay. Great,
versus the farmers markets, the pantries or in addition.
great.
And we actually just, city manager and myself just came from a meeting with Marine Community Clinics and learned all sorts of ways that we can partner. So I think as the technical group starts to figure out what are the nuts and bolts of the outreach and have the opportunity for council members and others to weigh in would be great. Fantastic. Did you get what you needed from us on this item?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. And this work is, I'm really excited about this. The fact that the county is really taking the lead as they appropriately should be. And the benefits that will come to the community are incredible. So yay, we appreciate that. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Affordable Housing Trust Fund, another favorite topic. Hopefully those coffers are like magic and they just keep filling up. No, I know that. I wish. I know.
We do it.
We all wish, yes.
Yes, but I want to provide kind of first an update on projects that the council recently funded through the trust fund. The fund status, and then we have a concept that we want to introduce and get your thoughts on. So just the city council awarded $1.45 million last year to 3 affordable housing, 100% affordable housing projects. And all of those are currently underway. They're at various stages. So the permanent supportive housing at 3301 Kerner is anticipated to be completed in December 2024, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that grand opening. The rehab at Marinville Estates, that's on Novato Street in the canal. 2 units at 153 Novato Street have already been completed, and there'll be 2 more units that are going to be rehabbed. And then there's the Terralinda Manor Rehabilitation Project. They have started work in 3 sort of prototype mock-up units, and they'll be launching the full rehabilitation on August 1st, coming right up. Their completion date is estimated for June 2025. As far as the fund, the most recent significant in lieu fee contribution to the fund was the Aldersley redevelopment project contributed $508,000 in September of 2023. And our total unencumbered fund balance, so this is when you subtract, you know, awards we've already made, but also like our BMR program is funded through this trust fund. So once we take that out, we have about $900,000. At this time, there are not projects in the immediate pipeline that we're anticipating to contribute to the fund in the immediate future. So there are projects down the road, but we're not in the next 6 months, say, we're not necessarily expecting to get a huge infusion. So that's our fund status. Christine, did you have anything? Okay.
No.
All right.
I mean, great. And
Great that it's not zero, but yeah.
and make-
Can you speak to when you're gonna open up remind me if we had a threshold before we open up call for applications?
So we don't have like an official threshold in the guidelines, but
Okay.
we typically do try to have at least $1 million in the fund.
Okay.
Just for because of the staff capacity to
Mhm.
like open up a NOFA and do that whole evaluation.
Okay.
It's a big lift to do for like, you know, a $500,000 NOFA.
So when, given that, knowing that we're not gonna have anything down in the pipeline for 6 months, so would the NOPA be opening up summer of 2025? Because it does help our community partners to know when some money might be coming online.
So I think that if we one of the things that we've talked about, and this isn't sort of officially in my notes, but I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
sort of put it forward now, just as a bookmark or a placeholder, is that the county typically does their funding cycle. They launch in like December, January, and they do it
Okay.
at the beginning of the year. And one of the things that we've talked about is that it could be really, really beneficial to align
Mhm.
so that we're coordinating our funding efforts.
Mhm.
And so another piece or sort of layer to that is when our community partners are applying for funds, the way it's currently set up, they do a county application and then they do a separate city application that asks for all the same things in a different format. And so that's a little bit burdensome. And so one of the things that we could look at if the council wanted is, do we have a joint application? We still keep the evaluations completely separate. We peel those applications and we, you know, the council looks at San Rafael's. But, you know, that might be something that could be beneficial both for our partners who do one application and check that they want to be considered for San Rafael. And then also from a staffing perspective.
Love
sense.
that idea.
Okay.
So in saying that, would you think we would, and I don't know if the co-application would be done in time, but this next December, January, would we have sufficient, I mean, we're not quite at 1 million, but is that where you're thinking of putting that into place for 2025? Or are we waiting for I'm just trying to get the timing and expectations.
So I think that we could have a lower funding threshold if we do it with the county, right?
Okay.
So even if like, then if we
Yeah.
wanted to do, you know, 500 or 750,000, you know, we could potentially do that because we're doing this joint model.
So we can meet them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. They would see, you know, like maybe they ask for ours for the final, a bigger chunk from the county or something like that.
I love that. I mean, because we don't want the money just sitting in the fund. We want to
Sure.
spend it. Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
So with all, I was sort of like, what do we see as the life cycle of the trust fund? As more and more projects hopefully are coming on as affordable housing.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be putting, right, we may not see this as full, I guess, or filling up. So are we doing any type of projections on sort of the growth or pathway of the affordable housing fund?
I think it varies, and this has really been the struggle, because we do have commercial projects at the commercial linkage fee. Or if they actually, they may not choose to provide the units and pay our in lieu fee. So it really depends on the project and time of the process. You recall even like, you know, we have a hotel pending, right? That could come out at any point. That's a pretty big, that's $1 million. That's as a exclusionary fee. Last night, the planning commission approved 1515 4th Street. That has about 2.5 million in that fee. So it just really depends on when these projects actually materialize and when they pay those fees. So
Like
it's
that
hard
one's
to
in 3
forecast.
years.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So that's why it's hard to forecast when these come in, but it really does depend. And this is really the unique part about providing the affordable housing. The developers have the option of paying the inclusionary or providing the units. For the most part, they've been providing the units, but then there are some that may actually pay the fee, so.
And I guess just in general, based on that and the timing that we're not seeing this coming in as quickly as I think we'd love to see it, but we don't, it's actually good, I think, that we don't have a policy that says we need to wait for it to be a certain amount. And so it gives us that flexibility because as we've seen in some of these, the prior projects, even though they weren't huge amounts, they're really beneficial to get these projects done. So.
Fantastic. Anything else on that item before we move along?
So we do have a concept that we wanted to put forward that's in line with some of the comments that you just made, which is, so the city, as I mentioned before, we have guidelines for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and they establish periodic notices of funding availability. And that process works really well for new construction, and it works well for rehabilitation funding. It is typically less effective for acquisitions to preserve housing as affordable and prevent tenant displacement. And that's because, as we all know, opportunities in the real estate market arise, and they don't care when the funding cycle is. And so they have to be acted upon quickly. The County Board of Supervisors has a much bigger trust fund, and they fund projects in jurisdictions across the county through their trust fund, and they have a policy of asking jurisdictions to contribute to projects located in their jurisdiction. And so one of the things that we've had a couple of opportunities come up in the last few years for acquisitions, and the current mechanism we have doesn't lend itself to us being responsive. But we really want to be able to fully leverage the county's dollars. And as you said, Councilmember Kurtz, the city's role is really like this filler, right? Like we're, we need that funding to come mostly from the county and from other sources, and then we're coming in to try and get it across the finish line. But one of the things that we wanted to put forward for consideration is there a model that puts a modest amount of funding aside for acquisitions each year that's able to be deployed more quickly for projects that meet a certain set of criteria. So obviously a minimum affordability level, and much of the same criteria used for the NOFA about the organizational capacity, leveraging of other sources. So what this could look like is a small amount of funding, for example, could be $200,000. That's a capped amount each year, so that if someone comes and says, hey, we have an acquisition, we're really missing that last little finish line dollars, that the city would have the flexibility to deploy that funding without going through an entire NOFA.
So that, I think it'd be interesting for the entire council to weigh in on that. So, because that's a policy direction. So that's something the subcommittee, I mean, we can give our input, but that has to be the full council has to make a decision on that. Because we have been more around, what our current policy is. It's not on preservation. We really look to the county with their both flexibility and bigger dollars to do that. So it's not that I'm not opposed to it. I'm just.
I think the reason we wanted to bring it up here is just because it is the subcommittee. It's just to kind of get a pulse check on, there's pros and cons to it. But when Mike and I were talking about this the other day, if there's a project that's real time, it's just, these are the pros and cons of this cycle. And so I think it'd be helpful I think the feedback that would be helpful for staff is, should we bring it forward to the full council in this update? And if so, there would be a threshold. It's not like it's all open all the time rolling. It would be like up to a certain dollar amount, right? So if it was $200,000 or 15% of what's ever in the
Hmm.
Affordable Housing Trust Fund is open for that kind of rolling basis thing for when there's like meeting a moment where like, you know, Alliance or some other builder of not affordable housing says, you know, I just need $100,000 and I can get this thing done. We have no opportunity to, we have no mechanism to do that right now.
Councilmember Kurtz, what are your thoughts?
I think it's gonna be, you know, again, devil in the details, because we also know the agencies that are most equipped to do this. Where we have other agencies who are not as equipped to do this, could they take advantage of this opportunity? And so I think there's that sort of balance of thinking about it and also meeting the criteria, so it's not,
Arbitrary.
right, it's just, and have they exhausted other all the other avenues, and so that would be where I would be thinking of, you know, if it's a large agency that has a huge endowment, and they're like, but the city has money, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, maybe that's part of the criteria is we think about kind of the mom and pop. You know, I bought this 8-unit thing, or, you know, that it's the money
Like
is
the Marin
being
Villa unit.
highest and best use for those that really need, there's a true need.
Right.
That's good feedback.
That's sort of what was going through my head right now.
And I like the idea of a set amount, either a percentage basis or not the percentage, I probably have it 200,000. You threw that out. I was thinking 250,000, 250. So maybe that, because we do want to have that partnership for all the right reasons, especially if we are trying to maximize county dollars, and this shows meeting up in the conversation. So there's.
And it really needs to be that last
Mile.
that
Last
last mile.
Yeah, the gap
Cause it
financing.
can't be the starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be another piece of the criteria.
And how do we confirm that?
Because it's small dollars. I mean, in the big scheme of these
Yeah.
projects.
That's what we were talking about, like there are doorknobs, yeah. It's,
And I do think bringing it to the entire council, because it is policy saying the subcommittee's weighed in, this is where we are. I mean, this is one of the priorities of our goals and objectives. So really hearing from the rest of them.
When I first heard this, it was really tools.
Yeah.
We used, we have a set piece of policy, but we are missing this windows that come up because it is real time.
Yeah.
That is time sensitive, and a lot of times, even for it's the leverage opportunity. That's why I look at it, is say,
Maybe that's part
we
of the
know
criteria
it's
too.
small. We know we're
Yeah.
again, almost very similar to like when we have redevelopment agency dollars back in the day. We're always that small leverage gap filler. We're not the main project piece, but they do look for that other tiered partnership. And the county, that's always the county's first question. Where's the city at?
Yeah.
So to say that, hey, you're within our off cycle, so you're eligible for these pieces, you can go through this as a tool.
Fantastic.
it's
Okay.
interesting to also, sorry, one more
Yeah, go
comment.
ahead.
To have it be a subset of the NOFA, somehow of that process versus a brand new whole
Yeah,
process.
100%.
So we're not, figuring
Figuring
out,
using people or, yeah.
figuring out how it all ties.
That
there's a
should be
way-
seamless and logical and.
What way of entering into the NOFA off cycle? Or for specifically for this, because I don't think we necessarily use the NOFA or state that in the NOFA for acquisition.
We haven't. That's
Mhm.
that's the whole
Yeah.
point. This is a
Right,
policy
correct.
change.
Right,
So,
right,
yeah.
so,
We
yeah,
haven't.
but tying it into the note, not creating another
Process.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So we are on item 5, other policy and program updates. We have 3 updates, the inclusionary housing policy, launch of the ADU center, and homelessness response activities. So inclusionary housing, like she's still at it. She's going.
So quick background, in 2019, 2020, the council, in response to increasing pressure on the housing market and lack of housing supply, examined barriers to housing development in San Rafael and looked for feedback, including feedback from developers. And one of the pieces that was identified as a significant financial cost and barrier was the city's inclusionary requirement, which requires market rate developments to provide units as affordable. At the time, it was 20% of the total units in the project as affordable. And we got the feedback that made it less likely to complete housing developments in the city. And so after further evaluation in 2021, the city council adopted a lower inclusionary policy in an effort to spur housing development and increase the supply of housing in San Rafael. And so the policy is now at 10% low. There's a couple different options, but generally it's at that 10% low income of the total units, excluding density bonus units. And so at this point, we wanted to just let you know that staff's preparing to come back to council now that the policy's been in place for 3 years with an evaluation of how that policy's performed. And also that, you know, we'll bring recommendations based on those findings about the inclusionary percentage requirement, and then also the required affordability levels, right? Very low, low, moderate. So on Monday, I'm happy to say that the staff finalized a contract with a consultant that specializes in economic analysis to support us with that evaluation.
Okay.
And our goal is to bring this item to the city council before the end of the calendar year.
So the consultant, because of course I already know Councilman refers to this word, but like this, we're curious if the staff recommendation might be to drop it to 15%. Are we gonna wait to go through the consultant work to see all the things, to see how the last 3 years? So am I trying to get to the solution? We haven't done all the analysis yet.
No, I think that's really the kind of question mark
Okay.
is like, do we return back to 20%, is it
Or
15, but there's also the
18,
question
13,
too.
there are a lot of
yeah,
numbers in there.
And that's really what we'll have the consultant evaluate, really kind of looking at spread of really across other jurisdictional, other inclusion requirements we have. One thing that's been a big change agent has really been the state housing laws. We talk about like the barriers to entry, supporting of that. I actually, if you look at our pipeline, significant projects in the pipeline, using some of the state density allowances. But we are missing really some of the inclusionary pieces we have. So we had a 15 or 20. So there are units that are kind of a question mark where we need to land about moving us forward. So it's a good opportunity to reevaluate that. I know we looked at that for a couple of projects we've been evaluating. Like, where should we be? So I think it's a good time. So.
And when it comes to end of December with the update after working with the consultant, the staff will be asked, but sorry, the council will be asked either hold where we are or alter it. So will there be an action step out of that then we would also hold for another period of time to see how we're, okay.
And forgive me if I missed this in your comments, we're talking cash in lieu. Is that part of the consultant study, like
No.
increasing the
So
dollar amount?
the council approved in December 2022, it went into effect July 1, 2023, a updated affordable housing in lieu fee. So that piece has been updated. So this will be primarily looking at that percentage level.
The other thing is percentage level, but then also the level of affordability. You know,
Mhm.
we've seen this kind of play out where we look at moderate for our income levels on the market. So, but we really know our real need is low and very low. So really trying to figure out like, where's that sweet spot? So that's really having some economic support to kind of get at those numbers really will help us.
Councilmember Kurtz, additional questions or comments on this item?
No, I mean, I'm at the higher end anyway, so I mean, I think seeing the data, because I mean, the council approved at the 10% was the idea that we are gonna see a lot more results from that. I'm not sure we've seen those results, but the data will be really helpful to validate that. And so increasing it or lowering it, I'm not sure if that's really the driver. Because I'm not sure that's driving the affordable housing that we need. And so we spend a lot of time looking at this, and at the end of the day, there's the in lieu option, there's other things. We need affordable housing. We need low affordable housing. So I'm not sure. So I think it's good. We need to go through this. It is another tool. I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure that drives the results we want to see.
And thank you for bringing it forward. This was one of the goals and objectives. So thank you for following through on that. Okay, next item, the launch of ADU Center.
Sure, so
Very
this is the
exciting.
last you'll hear from me, I promise.
No, you're not gonna, the ball is out of the park with you right now. but-
Just an update that San Rafael worked with the County of Marin and other jurisdictions to bring the ADU center that's been operating for a number of years in Napa Sonoma to Marin County with support from the Marin Community Foundation as well. And that launched in Marin County on April 1st, including in San Rafael. We did a press release, we announced it on, Nextdoor, and the planning manager participated in a launch webinar where folks could come and ask questions. The services include one-on-one feasibility consultation for homeowners who want to build an ADU, technical assistance, a list of recommended vendors, sort of tried and true ADU construction professionals. And then coming soon, we're hoping to have pre-approved ADU plans available, and also down the road, loan options for homeowners who are looking to build an ADU, because the data is showing that cost is a significant concern or factor when people are looking at doing this. So this is a program that helps in the completion of one of our housing element programs, program 26, that specifically focuses on ADUs. We will continue to get the word out to residents about this resource. And, one of the things, in addition to the primary purpose, which is to support homeowners in getting through this process, the other thing that's, I think, will be really valuable is the data that the center collects. So we're looking forward to continuing to provide updates to you and data on this program, which has an initial 3-year term.
Questions on it? When are we providing any funding to this program? Or that's one first question. Go ahead.
So the first year is completely covered between the county, REAP, Regional Early Action Planning dollars, and the Marine Community Foundation.
Great.
We're not contributing
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
Year 2, so the way that the MCF funding works is it tapers off in a little bit in year 2 and then a little bit in year 3. And so the city and every jurisdiction will kick in 15,000 in year 2
Okay.
and then 20,000 in year 3.
Okay. That seems very equitable. Fantastic. The other question is, and I don't know if this will be part of the data. There's been talks in other communities, I think Seattle did this, of having like income restricted units, as it were, or Section 8 units, or ones that are, so someone goes through the ADU process and they mark it as a low income or affordable housing unit, and then maybe they tax benefit. I don't even know the mechanics of that. Is that something that one has already been looked at Napa? Is that something we bring forward? Because that's interesting to us, right? It kind of gets at our arena numbers as well. So has there been discussion around that? Or is this more just the fundamental, how do you get one built in your backyard? Because I think we want to.
So their bread and butter right now is, how do you get this built in your backyard? Is it feasible? What are the, things you're going to need to do, and interfacing with the jurisdiction. But down the road, they are looking at, what are the ways we can do financial support. And so I think we're happy to look at those models for, in exchange for a tax benefit, for example, because yes, they absolutely have those in other cities.
Well, especially if they're Section 8, I mean, they had guaranteed rent stability. So maybe the person's building it, so as part of the ADU program, you're learning, you're getting your plans about how to build it, and you're getting a whole document on how Section 8 can be applied to it going forward. Like, I would like to have that as part of the education piece, because some homeowners might not even recognize, because if you know you have a secured form of rental payment, that might make a difference.
I think the other piece around this is as we go to the council, and these are all sort of coming back, the first part of August, the new legislation pieces around ADU. There's one, I can't remember which of these numbers that I have. I always forget which number it is, but one of them that says, I believe that if you have an ADU, it will not be included in a new assessment of your home.
Okay.
So again, I don't know where that's gonna land. But it's gonna be an interesting piece. And then there's a little bit outside the ADU conversation, but there's some other legislation around potentially looking at changing the RENA numbers for what are they calling it? Acutely low income, and essentially trying to encourage shelter or housing for homeless. Right now, the position is from Cal Cities and others is actually to say no, and yes, in terms of we need the shelter and we need the housing, but no in terms of changing the RENA numbers.
Yeah.
Because it would be so difficult from a reporting perspective and all the rest. So anyway, there's a number of these legislation pieces that I think are really trying to move forward, and we're seeing that across the state to encourage more housing and more affordable housing. And now this category of acutely low, but also around the ADUs.
Maybe it would be a good idea to ask Nancy Hall Bennett.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, she gave,
Yeah.
this.
City
she gave,
council meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And provide that context, because it is, and, you know, then they can, she can say how, you know, how Cal Cities is weighing in on these things, or
right.
which ones are really hot and which ones are probably gonna die, and she'll say that publicly.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And some of them, by the time I probably ask her, some of them
Might
will.
be- yeah,
Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, there, a lot of these are really, really contentious, but I think as we start sharing information out to the community, people don't necessarily know a lot of these laws that may or may not be beneficial in wanting to support the ADU model.
Fantastic. Thank you. Awesome presentations all the way down to through the agenda. I think I'll turn to the city manager. We have the homelessness response activities, and of course, recognizing for the folks in the room, we have our homelessness newsletter that we are working very hard to put out any updated information that's publicly available through that. And on August 19th, there will be a presentation at the city council meeting, which is more extensive than what we'll have today. So, city manager.
So, there's multiple updates. Before I forget, I just want to add for the folks in the room, if you go to the City of San Rafael Homelessness website, you can also subscribe to that website at any time because there's a newsletter, but there's also regular
Videos.
news posts that are happening like on a weekly basis. So if you want to get automatic updates, you can sign up there. Quick update on the lawsuit. So, and we expect Judge Chen will rule within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We went through the exercise of providing him the map that would indicate, that would reconcile and clarify that there are actually, with our new ordinance, we'd have 200 spaces available. And that was the key piece that he felt like he needed some data validation before he would rule. But all of our expectations are that he will dismiss the lawsuit. We also expect the next lawsuit to be filed, probably, you know, whether it's the next day or the next
It'll be
month,
next day.
and whether or not the Anthony Prince can put a legal theory together that the judge would consider taking that case on, or granting a temporary restraining order that would then block us again from any enforcement remains to be seen, but we should have that information probably, like I said, 2 to 3 weeks by it. I would be surprised if we don't have that information by the end of the first week of August. So that's what's happening in that space. Structure enforcement today. The team has been out noticing code enforcement and PD along Anderson. So all the structures similar to the ones that were on West Francisco are being noticed. And then the team, the implementation team, has then going to go out. Are they doing 72 hours? Yeah.
So
Well, so the dump trucks and then the dismantling and the debris removal and all of that will happen in the next week. And so that, and then, do you know yet if we've scheduled Beverly Wood, the judge?
we're waiting for confirmation. I
Okay.
can choose the hour, but schedule.
So I'm meeting with the city attorney this afternoon, and I know he is in the process of trying to secure a hearing date. So we expect another round of appeals. So the elapsed time, the frustration we have with the elapsed time is that if those that will voluntarily comply and say, okay, I'll take my structure down, we give them the new tent, we can come in and take the debris. But those who say, I'm going to appeal, have this appeal right to go to the hearing. And so that will probably, just based on where we are now in space and time, that'll probably be the mid to end of August. And then if she's consistent with her rulings in the prior hearings, then she will allow a period of time up to, I think, 10 days for voluntary compliance. And if not, then the city can come and do the dismantling and removal. However, and this is really important to understand the nuance. So we're managing expectations. This isn't we're not clearing all of Anderson, and based on the implementation of our new ordinance, if we have the opportunity to implement that, it would reduce the amount of individuals camping along Anderson. But that particularly, there's one section where it's probably 40 feet deep. There's a grass section. It's off the sidewalk right away. It's off the, there's a 10-foot setback from all the private property where people could camp. And so what will happen is that our teams will have to continually go out there and maintain and manage, because what's been happening is the last round of the structure enforcement, we took 8 structures down, gave them tents, and either new people move in and build structures that weren't there previously, and it's hard for us to know, and it's kind of neither here nor there, but some of the people, when we remove the structure, they just start rebuilding. And so it will be a little bit of like constant enforcement energy and activity to try to get on top of that. But if we don't have a temporary restraining order in place, we'll be able to make more visible and at faster paced progress. The other piece that I think is important to understand about this whole area, the Mahone Creek Path area encampment, is that the section of the path between West Francisco and East Bay Tires and Sprouts and Cal West Rentals is the staff is working on developing the safe sanctioned camping area there. So we're working with a contractor on putting fencing up, securing a security company, 24/7, 3 security guards, 1 at each end and 1 roaming. And then we're in the process of trying to hire a provider who will be the on-site management, which is like another layer of, when we talk about the lessons we learned from the SSA, one of them was that having a nonprofit case management, a homelessness service providers on site working with them as clients on a pathway to housing. So this isn't a long-term section camping. This is a space for us to kind of get our literal hands around the problems and make sure these folks are on a pathway to housing, that they're in case management. And then the section of the path that's right now from East Bay to Anderson, East Bay Tires to Anderson, that's directly across visually from BioMarin. Once the sanctioned camping area is up, we will prohibit camping in that whole section of the path. So that the public has access to that. And then, but again, the reality is that the big unknown and the thing we just don't have control over, unfortunately, is if we do get another lawsuit and we do get another temporary restraining order, all bets are off. So we've got plan A, like we've had it all along for the last year, and this is what we're gonna do. And if the courts decide to block us, then we're a little bit at the mercy of the court's schedule, so we ask for it to be expedited, we ask to get on the docket, but, and the temporary restraining order, yes or no, would happen fast. If the TRO is in place and then we need to actually file some motion, then that will take another couple of months. So it's, I'll keep updating this, the council, this committee, the community on where, are we at plan A, or are we now having to pivot to plan B? So that's the plan for the sanctioned camping area. Any questions before I pivot to city and county?
Yeah, before you go there, so I think there's a lot of confusion in the community around the role of the most recent Supreme Court ruling. And so maybe if you could just speak to why that addresses one part of the law, but the lawsuits we have here are actually a different part of the law. So even though the SCOTUS ruling gets a lot of people's attention, it actually doesn't really apply with what we're doing there. Very confusing.
The foundational, there's a couple of pieces in our that the lawsuit against the city is based on. One is state created danger, and that legal theory was not addressed by the Grants Pass decision.
Right.
So it doesn't give us this complete ability to widespread ban camping, and it doesn't automatically mean that this lawsuit is moot, and that's why he hasn't ruled yet. And the theory for the community members here is that because the city isn't able to provide alternative shelter adequately to the individuals that are camping in our city, that we are creating unsafe state created danger, state meaning city created danger. And that's again, not covered by Grants Pass. The part that is covered by Grants Pass, that we are continuing to evaluate our current ordinance and whether or not to bring, and we've got our attorneys doing more analysis on the Grants Pass decision and what elements of that we could bring some recommendations for adjustments for what we're calling, we're always looking to strike this right balance between the having enforcement tools that are available and accessible to us to address the situations that are just completely untenable for businesses, residents, and the community. And that's been our deepest frustration over this last year, is not having access to those. So because we're going to have alternative shelter, that is one of the primary reasons that we are going to do the sanctioned camping area, is it allows us to say, you can't be here in the middle of Fourth Street or in the West End in front of Johnny Donuts because we're giving you an alternative safe shelter place to be. And so, so that's, and again, that's short-term
Yeah, no,
strategy, but I think that answers the question of SCOTUS and why it's just, we're not free and clear.
And I think I think we've talked about putting an FAQ on the homelessness website, so community members who are interested in learning more, being educated, actually have a place to go to hear what you just said or to learn about what you said.
Yeah, it's a good reminder too. So the staff is working on that right now and kind of gathering, because we are getting these questions all the time.
Yeah.
And then, so there'll be an FAQ. There's a couple of videos from the Assistant City Manager, John Stefanski, that are on that homelessness website that speak a little bit to some of the updates that I was just providing. We're going to kind of continue that because it's just a little easier to watch a couple of minutes video than read it all. We will also at the, you mentioned the August 19th council meeting where we're going to be giving this all things homelessness update. We will include the legal analysis on the
Great.
Supreme Court decision.
Great.
And we should make sure we've got Scott and Mitch to come and speak to the differences between
Yeah.
the lawsuit here in San Rafael and
The Ninth Circuit.
in the Ninth
Yeah.
Circuit. And then we also know that everyone is trying to figure out, and everyone meaning every city in town and Marin all over the nation, how does this apply in our unique situations? And so regionally, so this is a good segue to the city and county are working with the new Director of Health and Human Services, our homelessness team. We had a really fantastic collaboration partnership meeting yesterday to address a couple of different things. One of which is, the roles and responsibilities of the city and the county. Like, as you know, the city doesn't receive any money for health and human services. We don't get a single dollar of funding other than, grants like the $6 million grant that we co-authored with the county, but we don't receive any money for mental health services, social services, behavioral health services. And so we are solely reliant on the county's goodwill and partnership to provide those services to the unhoused residents in San Rafael, well, to the housed residents in San Rafael as well. So we are working on how to implement that $6 million grant. We're talking a lot about what does transitional housing look like, and where could that be located so that we can really try to create the relief in our downtown corridor of the significant impact we've had with these unsanctioned camping areas. And so $6 million sounds like a lot of money, but when we're talking about like the infrastructure that it takes to create a site for interim transitional housing, and some of this money, $1 million to $1.5 million of it will go to the sanctioned camping area. But the idea is that if you would think about it linearly, which these are human beings in a complex system, but folks would be in the sanctioned. I should mention one other thing for the members of the public about the sanctioned camping area. Folks will be there for a period of months as we're working urgently with the county on trying to stand up a transitional housing location that's not here in downtown San Rafael. That's the biggest struggle, is where, because nobody wants it anywhere. As you know, we've spent the last year trying to find a site or location that's
5
more
years,
appropriate.
last
5 years, 10 years.
10 years.
But the
Yeah.
last year in
Yeah.
particular, knowing that we need this alternative, the thing I was going to mention about our particular lawsuit also that's unique to San Rafael and why we still have such a significant impact in our city is that there's only 160 shelter beds, congregate shelter beds in this county for over 1,300 homeless people. And so the Supreme Court, like the original limit, before grants pass, and the relationship to this lawsuit is that the judge in our federal judge, Judge Chen, has been very, very clear that he wrote a 50-page opinion, the first line of which said, because the city of San Rafael is not willing or able to stand up a safe sanctioned camping area, therefore we're going to regulate your city and your own ability to enforce your own laws to the extent that, you know, he blocked us from even enforcing the fire code, our own fire chief's determination that there were unsafe structures that we needed to remove because there was wood and they were unsafe conditions. And he said, you can't do that either. So, I mean, the legal challenges are beyond what anyone has typically experienced. Other jurisdictions are getting sued for lots of things, but it doesn't go to this extent where we're not actually able to implement our own government code, health and safety code. So, yeah, that's where we're at with that.
That was amazing, taking a really complex issue and putting it into 8 minutes. Do you have any other questions? Because we are at time.
Sure, let me just
So
go really quickly on two that are probably already on your radar, but with the potential of new lawsuits, always. School starting, now it's right around the corner, and David said, and we'll have a lot of new families and parents who probably need to be re-educated, and maybe there's an opportunity in their communication out to parents or their back, you know, when they first start coming to school.
Then the back to school packet.
Packets to meet with them or at least point them to the website or whatever.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that by 8/19, they will all be here, which is good, but not good.
I'll call the superintendent and
That's a
talk
good
to
idea.
her about, yeah, that is a really good idea.
We can always just send a link too. There's not a lot changing
Yeah,
from
it's
the
a-
webinar that we did a year ago. So.
But it might be a whole different group.
No,
of
no, I
parents.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
no, exactly.
Content we can share.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then another question on more in terms of we had talked a little bit about this and I didn't know if there was an update. When the county last week put out, was it last week? All the heat, extreme heat warnings, are they providing any additional level of support or services to the homeless community? In terms of when that happens, because I mean, during winter, we know opening up a shelter doesn't work. Because people aren't gonna leave, but are they, when they put out that type of notification? That was so broad
Yeah.
everywhere, but then not be able to support. I think we need to see what they're willing to do in terms of supports. For the homeless community.
Yeah, I think that's you know, one of the many threads of this county city collaboration and what's, you know, the Office of Emergency Services and Public Health being kind of like we need to be clear about what the criteria are and what they're gonna provide
Right.
and how do we get that information out there. We're not, it's not, I would just say it's not where it needs to be, so I will make sure to add that in my list of topics that we're covering with them around coordination and the need. Cause we're not out of the woods. Right, the fire season and the hot, there's probably.
Yeah, and that was all the direction from the Office of Emergency Management, which may be totally independent of what's happening on the Health and Human Services side.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a few minutes over, but thank you as always for the incredible work that you've done. We look forward to hearing you, Alexis, at a future meeting, a council meeting, and then of course, August 19th for more update on homelessness. This meeting is adjourned.